Welcome back, YouTube family. Welcome again for joining True Dialogue. This is my show on AIP TV. I'm honored to have my guest Solomon Kamizong here. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Mr. Solomon Kamizong is the Assistant Director of Student Involvement and Public Relations at the Nimburu Center at the University of Maryland College Park. He's been speaking to truth for many, many years at that campus, has been a fire in the dark for Black students, Latino students on the campus, and I'm truly honored to have him on the show. Today, we're going to talk about the FBA movement, the situation that's going on, and the social media landscape. And before we really get into it, I want to just play a clip for you all.
We don't even got to go into the license. When you go fill out a test when you're in school and they ask you this, that, and third, this, that, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be totally honest with you. And I know we got to get back to our topics. We already a few minutes in. I'd rather fill in Black than African American because our Africans don't even fuck with us.
Wow.
Because they don't.
And Americans do?
Well, you're American, Mace. You're born in America. When you go to the Olympics, and when I say African American, you go over there, they call us Yankees and all that. They fuck with us, but we're not from the motherland. We're from America. So I'd rather say I'm a Black American. When we go to the Olympics as a country, and somebody Black is fighting from the United States, you don't say African American. You say American. You don't even put a color on it. It's an American fighter fighting a European fighter, or China or Japanese or anything. You're known in the Olympics as an American. It doesn't matter what color you are. You're an American fighting against somebody from Cameroon or Senegal, whatever. The point being is they don't categorize it when it's world competition, but when it's other shit, it needs to be categorized. So I consider myself a Black American. I don't consider myself African American. And shout out to all my niggas in Africa. Much love. But y'all don't consider us real Africans.
Record. All right. So, considering that clip, and there's a lot of things that really hit me there. This FBA movement that seems to be rising up now. And I think it was always there, but with social media, it's just allowed to spread and just sort of pool with these these audiences and so on. The situation now as it is, it seems like this FBA movement, I get wanting to be proud of your heritage as a Black American, and also to be to understand our story from slavery to freedom in this country, although we're still stuck in the wilderness of the United States. But it always seems like it's focused on pitting African Americans against other Africans from other parts of the world, and that's what the big focus is. And it just hurts our chances at international alliances, and also people don't really realize the worldwide perception outside of sports. Yeah, in sports, yeah, you may be an American, but when you travel to other places outside of the sports arena, you're a Black person, and people don't automatically think of you as a Westerner or an American. So it shows you're not an inheritor of that culture, that perception, that image. And I feel we need a diaspora communities around the world. It will help bring us strength. And we could go into Marcus Garvey, and also the fact that Africans in America are still the minority in the country. But there's a lot of things to touch on. But Solomon, I'll let you sort of dig into this and get your perspective.
No, you bring up a lot of good points, and I applaud you for. And I say this, anytime that and this goes into to the realm of pan-Africanism. So it's a really smooth segue into what I'm about to say in terms of thanking you for creating this platform, because we need to be supporting as many other progressive, revolutionary, independent, Black, African-centered media outlets that are out there. We know that CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and the like are never going to, their corporate media, they're not going to put the truth and perspectives, and facts out there, especially in regard to our struggle issues that are endemic to, to our communities, important to our communities. They're not going to put them out there in their proper light. They never have, and likely never will. And so, when I'm given the opportunity, or not even given the opportunity, if I was never given the opportunity to come on your show, I still applaud you, and I applaud so many others, people at Black Agenda Report, folks that are doing this kind of work. It's vastly important. So to get to your question, when you showed me that clip with Cameron having the discussion with Mace on their, I believe it's it's their Sports Center show, and fine, I'm glad that he decided to raise that issue. I'm glad that he said what he had to say, even though I could not disagree more, because I'm hoping that people like yourself, other people watching it, see the hypocrisy of it, see the flaws in his argument, and use it as fodder for discussion with their friends, their family, in community centers and so forth, and raise a specter of consciousness. Number one, our origins, and it's a historical thing. Otherwise, the historical evidence is abound. It is abound by Black scholars. For those folks that are watching right now, that a Black scholar is not enough. There have been white scholars, Gerald Massey, and so many others that have done the research. We know that human life started in the continent of Africa. In East Africa. We know this. We know that the migration patterns now as human beings. Matter of fact, the first people to step foot in what is now known as Europe were Black Africans, were Black people from the continent of Africa, the motherland, and we know that the original people in lots of different places. I mean, we look at the Acta in the Philippines. They're Black people. They still have a population there. So for Cameron to invoke, like, I was born here, as if your history started here, So yes, your mom and your father may have been born in New York City or wherever they were born. Shoot, your grandparents may have been there. Your great grandparents that may have been there. But if we keep going back, we'll go back far enough and get to your great grandparents or your great grandparents, and you'll find that they were not born in the United States. All right, as Amali Yeshatel, I heard him say, who's the leader of the, and the chairman of the Uhuru movement. I heard him say one time, and he was spot on. He said, unless it was some kind of magic ship, when they stole, or magic ships plural, when they stole our ancestors from the continent of Africa and brought them throughout the Western Hemisphere, not just the United States, but throughout the Western Hemisphere. You couldn't have left as Africans, as Mindi, as Ashanti, or whatever your ethnic, Yoruba, Igbo. You couldn't have been in a magic ship, just then have just been transformed into some different being, with a different label. No, these labels were given to us, right? These labels were given to us. They were given to us. You are a Jamaican. You're Negro. You're a nigger. You're colored. You're American. You're Haitian. These are all labels that were given to us. But some of us became English-speaking Africans. Some of us became French-speaking Africans. Some of us became Spanish-speaking Africans, depending on who our colonizers were. Our brutal colonizers, our brutal enslavers. In this case, when we're talking about the slave trade, who our enslavers were, and therefore, even our names, our first and last names were taken. Right, our first and last names were taken. There were no Smiths and Williams and O'Neills running around the continent of Africa. They had much different last names, different first names. The same thing that was done to indigenous people, Native Americans, when they were put in those Indian schools, those boarding schools, and they said, kill the Indian, save the man. They changed their names. They wanted to eviscerate them from their culture, all that stuff. And that happened with African people. That happened with your ancestors, my ancestors. And so even when we look at Malcolm, what did Malcolm say one time? He said, tell us we're all citizens, that we were all born in this country. Well, a cat can have kittens in the oven, but that doesn't make them biscuits. That doesn't make them biscuits. And then one time Malcolm said, as he's always beautifully did when he would drop these metaphors and these examples, to help elucidate to his audiences, to Black people, to understand. And he said, you can have a bunch of men sitting at a table, right? You can have a bunch of men sitting at a table, and if only the white men have plates in front of them and they're eating food, you're sitting there. That doesn't make you a diner, because you're not dining on anything. You have nothing in front of you. They're the diners. They've got a plate of food in front of them. They're feasting on the meat, the seafood, the gravy, whatever it is. They're feasting on that. You're sitting there watching them eat that food. You're watching them eat that food. That does not make you a diner, as Malcolm says. You are not a diner until you have a plate of food in front of you, and you are given the opportunity to eat that food. So being in the United States, it does not make us a true American, right? Until we have the same inalienable rights as our white counterparts, and our nationality. Yes, but being born in the United States, your nationality, you can vote here, right? You can vote. It is your nationality. That is different than your ethnicity, and that is what people like Cameron are confusing. That has nothing to do with your ethnicity, your ethnic background, your ancestral background. It has nothing to do with that. So I can vote in the United States, and they say I'm an American citizen, and I may say I'm an American citizen, and someone can walk around and say that, and you can vote here, but that nationality is different. And then but that's still, even with that, based on the rampant police brutality, the redlining of our communities, the gentrification that goes on in our communities, there's still fodder. Like, so we may be citizens, but there have to be classes of citizens, and you must put whites up at the top, right? Not because you or I feel that we're inferior to whites. I know you well enough. I know you don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't feel like I'm inferior to whites in any shape, form, or fashion. But in this country, United States, they do have a tier system in terms of rights and justices and so forth. And the darker you are, you start to fall down that ladder. You do not have, we do not have white communities being hyper policed, and you do not see this rash of police brutality, targeted police brutality that in white communities as we see in Black and brown communities. The same thing that goes on with drug convictions. And somebody watching this show right now may be ignorant to the fact that whites do drugs at the same rate, and we're talking about cocaine and crack and heroin, all that stuff, the same rate that Blacks and Latinos do. But our communities, as a matter of fact, if you wanted to like really pick, if you really wanted to make a quibble and be extremely technical, white folks actually do many of those drugs at a higher rate than Blacks, Latinos do, than do African Americans and Latino Americans do. But the conviction rate does not tell the same story. Does not tell the same story, because it is like almost like a caste system. It is a tiered system. And so we understand that. The DOJ will say, we understand that, but we're going to hyper police those Black and brown communities. We're going to hyper police them. We're going to demonize them. We're going to criminalize them. We're going to oh my gosh, look at this property, that we could flip this and turn this, whatever. So let's go ahead and redline this, because our plan is to gentrify this, turn it into high cost condominiums and townhouses, and we're going to push these people out. We're going to push these darkies out. We're going to push them out. We're going to move in. We're going to build some Whole Foods and all that other stuff, and bring these white yuppies in. But that's what goes on. And so Cameron is completely wrong. Like, it's like, brother, what are you not realizing? What don't you recognize? What don't you recognize what is going on? Like, do you see the things that we're dealing with? Do you see the same things that people are dealing with in New York City, his hometown of New York City? Do you see white folks dealing with the same thing? Do you see white folks like, we know if you've ever been to New York City, how New York cops speak to Black folks, how aggressive they are. They're aggressive in general, but how aggressive they are with Blacks and Latinos. So it is our Africanness. We are African. We were African before we were Americans.
Yeah.
It just did not change overnight. And how long did it take before that citizenship distinction came about, right?
Right.
We were enslaved for hundreds of years. And then there's the struggle of Jim Crow and the voting rights and civil rights, acts of, in the mid 60s and all that stuff. Look at all these things that Black people had to do. People of African ancestry. I repeat, people of African ancestry had to do just to be considered American citizens, not even to have full rights, because we still in 2024 still don't have the same equal rights across the board as do whites. We have issues that we're faced with that have everything to do with our skin color, our ancestry, our ancestral backgrounds, our socio and even our socioeconomic status has so much to do with our skin color. Yeah. And so he's completely wrong. He is as African. If he wanted to just go ahead and pony up and put the money up, and I'll end on this, he would find out very quickly, if he did his ancestry, he would find out that it goes all the way back, probably someplace in West Africa. But even if it's not West Africa, his ancestry goes all the way back to Africa. Now, and the last thing I'll say, I hate when I hear people from FBA or what all these different groups that came about in the last few years start to talk about Africans don't fuck with us. Africans don't fuck with us. This generalized statement. Plenty of Africans that mess with you. I know plenty of Africans that have a rich Pan-African soul within them and mess with American-born Africans or Caribbean-born Africans, like what I say. Like, so I'm you're an American-born African, or if you were from Trinidad, you're a Trinidadian-born African. I know plenty of Africans, and so conversely, yes, are there some Africans that have, some continental Africans that have colonial minds? Of course they do. Of course they do. But there are American-born Africans, so-called African Americans, just like Cameron and other folks that look. And he said he has no problem with them, but there are Black people in this country, African Americans, who look down upon Black people from other parts of the world, that look down on continental Africans, that look down on Caribbean Africans, that will make fun of them and cast these aspersions that if you were blind and couldn't tell the inflection of the voice, you would say that it was a Ku Klux Klan member saying these things about continental, Africans. And so we have African Americans who have bought into that notion. They have bought into that. And so, Cameron, you can't generalize. You wouldn't want people to generalize about you, making the assumption that all African Americans think poorly about continental Africans. You wouldn't want that. So how the hell, what is the last poll? Did you poll the 1 billion plus Black Africans, continental Africans, and find out that it said that they all hate African Americans? They all don't mess with African Americans? That's bullshit. It's bullshit. Historically, we've had people like Kwame Nkrumah, who was a devout Pan-African. Kwame Nkrumah. And if they're looking at the FBA, because FBA likes to make fun of, folks from, the Caribbean as well, look at folks like Maurice Bishop, all right, and Henry Sylvester Williams and Marcus Messiah Garvey. Right. And we could go on and on. People that were born in the Caribbean and came, and they had a devout, strong love for not just African Americans, but Africans all over the world, Black people all over the diaspora.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, you said a lot of things right there. And one of the things I want to touch on is you mentioned that metaphor of, imagine we're all sitting at the table, and that was a metaphor from Malcolm X, as you just shared. We're all sitting at the table. The white guys are eating, but you, as the Black man, you're not eating. You don't have your plate of food. You're at the table, but you're not eating. And that just made me think, when this country was built, Black people were not even in the meeting for the ratification of the Constitution. During that meeting, we were decided to be 3/5 of a human being. We weren't even full human beings at that moment. So, like you said, hundreds of years of slavery. Then you go through Jim Crow. And now the last 50 years, there's been a push at integrate or desegregation, I should say. There's been a push at desegregation, but we're still a segregated society. And yeah, there's been a greater immigration of other groups coming, so that's kind of made it's not quite the same as Martin Luther King's America. We have like more diversity, I feel, but like you were saying, there's still a tiered system based on your skin complexion, your skin color. White is at the top, and it seems like black is still at the bottom. And the crazy thing is, when our ancestors first came here, it was a nightmare, and that's the other thing with the FBA and the ADOS movement. When we first came here, it was a nightmare for those first Africans who came here.
Yeah.
It would have been the worst place possible. Get me out of here, get me back home. But crazily enough, we have a movement among us where I feel like those are the broken ones among us. The ones who have been broken into this thing. Just like when Africans would have arrived, there would have been slaves who were already here who had finished the seasoning process, as they called it at that time, who were broken and who accepted their lot. But we always have those among us who are the fighters. So to build off that, I want you to talk about uh, a little bit about Marcus Messiah Garvey, the Pan African movements of the past, and the importance for international alliances and connecting with our brothers in the diaspora.
Yeah, well, Marcus Messiah Garvey, the founder of the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association, born in Jamaica, never even stepped foot in Africa, and he popularized the term Pan-Africanism, which was coined by a Trinidadian by the name of Henry Sylvester Williams, and Marcus Garvey really popularized it and led, perhaps the largest movement of Black people in history. By a lot of historians' accounts and so forth. But nonetheless, I mean, there were chapters all over the world of the UNIA, all over the world, in places like Louisiana. I mean, they had close to 24 chapters in Louisiana alone, and so folks in Malcolm X's parents were Garveyites, right? Malcolm X's parents were disciples of the Garvey movement and what he was espousing, and rise up, you mighty race of Black people. I mean, he was trying to really get Black people to believe in themselves and not to think of themselves as inferior to white folks, to Europeans, to Euro Americans, not to think, because when he came to the United States, I mean, he saw that there was an epidemic of that, of Black people being treated less than, being treated like animals, and Black people, some Black people believing, that this is their lot in life, that this is the lot in life. And so he started this movement, the UNIA, and he had publications like the Negro World, not just the Negro World, there were other publications, but that was perhaps the most popular of it. I mean, in places like Jamaica and Trinidad, which were still under a governorship from the UK, from Britain, it was considered a seditious act to be caught in Trinidad with a copy of the Negro World. And people were like, what is it? Were there a bunch of guns there? No, it was just it was a publication that was telling Black people to believe in themselves and to organize, and they had articles, and it was just, and white folks, and this is important, white folks did not want that, did not want Black folks to have any kind of good feelings about themselves, because when you have people that feel good about themselves and good about their community, they'll fight, right? They will fight, they will resist, and they will not buy into any psychological bullshit that you try to feed them to try to denigrate them. And so Garvey was a Pan-African, by the truest sense of the words. I mean, he believed in and taken up for the plight of people of African ancestry, Black people, no matter where they were in the world. I mean, if he was not a Pan-African, he would have came to the United States and looked at what was going on with Black people and just kind of tried to ignore it the best he could. But he said, I don't care that I'm from Jamaica. I don't care I'm from Jamaica. These are my people. These are my people. We saying that we share the same bloodline. We share bloodline that traces all the way back to West Africa. That traces all the way back to different parts of Africa. These are our people, and so that Pan-African movement is I mean, there are still chapters of the UNIA that exist to this day. Right now in 2024, there are still people that are very, very much moved by Garvey's words, and more importantly than his words, his actions. And so I just think that there is a strong place for Pan-Africanism, and I want to say this, and I'm not the one. This is Kwame Nkrumah alluded to this. We have to look at Pan-Africanism as not necessarily just an ideology. He said we have to look at Pan-Africanism as an objective, because when you have the likes of FBI and ADOS, and these folks that are espousing and this very divisive type of rhetoric, in terms of there's Africans, and then there's us. There's Black people from Africa, and then there's Black people from us. They're very much different than us. So Pan-Africanism, as Nkrumah alluded to, it should be also an objective. Because it should be something that we're moving towards. Because if more of us, you and I, are with it, but we know there's a lot of brothers and sisters that are not on that same raft right now, and we need to bring them along and do things like this show to help bring them along. Because with that being the objective, the more and more Black people that buy into the very pragmatic, rational understanding of Pan-Africanism, that unity, right? As you alluded to before, that unity helps our struggle much, much easier. As the African proverb goes, what? Many hands make light work. So I'm trying to pick up this rock. I'm struggling. And after a while, I might be able to, I'm struggling. But then I get 2 more hands from Issa. I get 2 more hands from you. And I got 2 more hands from this sister. And 2 more hands from this sister. Now, all of a sudden, we got 8 hands, right? And we're lifting now this rock that was really heavy to me. And even with you, it was a little bit less heavy. But now you got 8 hands. Now we're able to move this rock away from this door over here. And when you move it away from the door, you open the door and you go through it right towards liberation. Pan-Africanism is a vehicle that can carry us collectively to liberation. And I just want to say this, because I brought up Nkrumah. When you look at Nkrumah, when Nkrumah came to power, right, 1957, when he came to power, right, he could have just said, you know what, we're happy. Listen, as Ghanaians, listen, this is a brighter day. We can whatever. It wasn't good enough. I mean, he started calling out other countries like Congo. We cannot, yes, we are liberated from the shackles of colonialism, but until all of our brothers throughout the continent that still have the boot of colonialism on their necks, we cannot rest easy. And we have to do what we can where we are to help liberate them. And because the next step after Pan-Africanism, right, is what? Is internationalism. Right. Internationalism, right, where we care about oppressed people throughout the world. I'm sorry, I cannot turn a blind eye to what is happening to Palestinians right now. What has been happening to Palestinians long before, this current genocide is going on. This has been going on for 75 years. Malcolm X had strong words about Palestine. People can Google it, called Zionist logic, where he speaks about Palestinians and the Zionist control of Palestinians and the Zionist oppression of Palestinians. I mean, so then that is the next step, but there was a conference in 1955, the Bandung conference, where you had very much internationalist oriented, and you had people, you had Pan-Africanists there, and building with other people that call themselves internationalists, like Tito from Yugoslavia, and to go on and on. But imagine that. Imagine if Black people, the bulk, and we don't need, right? We may not get everybody. There are always going to be some what we call coons that are out there. But if we get a bulk of them, Issa, if we get a bulk of them, on board, it was just something like even 50%. Imagine what mountains can be moved economically, socially, justice wise. I mean, imagine the transatlantic collaboration that can go on, not just economically, but also socially, and all these different types of things between Africans here in the Western Hemisphere and Africans on the continent. The continent of Africa happened to be the most minerally rich plot of land continent on the face of the earth. So much so that these Europeans continue, like the French, still 60 to 70% of their economy is based off of their expropriation and exploitation of mineral resources in the continent of Africa in 2024, right? If we unify, then we like even within the continent itself, then we boot those SOBs out, boot them all the way back to their to Europe, boot them back to their European origins, boot them all the way back to that there, and now you nationalize these resources. Now you have these African countries now building up, strong educational, well-resourced educational institutions, strong, well-resourced medical institutions. I mean, where Congo now, is going from, maybe one medical clinic, one hospital for every 50 to 80,000 Congolese. That's unacceptable. But now there's the money to build those infrastructures, and I mean, we can go on and on. I'm so happy with this interview, but there's so many layers that people, that if they knew so many things that have been put in place, by the World Bank, the IMF, to keep Africa and keep the global South writ large in bondage, in perpetuity. We can break those shackles via Pan-Africanism. We can break those shackles via internationalism, because think about it, throughout the global South, there's more of us. When I say us, more people of color, way more people of color than there are people of European extraction, white folks. There's way more. So you have a unified African world, and then on top of that, you have another layer of a unified, global South, and the inroads that can be made by way of that. Oh my gosh, that is their greatest nightmare. That is the greatest nightmare. You and I both know that is their greatest nightmare. So, great question.
Right on. Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I feel we have to unite. And not only that, it gives us more options. We don't have to just limit ourselves to the United States. We can connect with our homeland, and we can build diaspora communities outside of our homeland. And the crazy thing is, I feel that if we move outside of this land, we go discover ourselves again in a place like Africa. And by the way, a lot of us, all of us really, we have African faces. We'll go to, pick your country. You'll go there, you'll fit right in. Cameron, he reminds me of a Nigerian. He
Yeah.
reminds me of,
Yeah.
you could list so many ethnic groups that he would fit right in. He would feel right at home. And so yeah, I think
He's
it's
probably Yoruba or Igbo. He probably has some West African roots. Seriously,
yeah,
Timmy
yeah.
or like that, Ashanti. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely. I mean, it's like all in his face. So if we go there, and we'll find that all these little petty things that we get into, gang banging. I'm this gang. The crazy thing, when I went traveled to Ethiopia, I'll tell a short story. When I traveled to Ethiopia my first time, and I came back, I was living in Chicago at that time. When I came back, when I was in Ethiopia, I saw brothers holding hands.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like oh, that's gay, pause, or anything. It was just that was a normal thing in the culture. I saw brothers holding hands. I saw brothers speaking to each other with ease. I saw brothers building with each other, connecting with it wasn't anything with it. But when I came back to America, immediately I saw two young black men about to get into it because one man threw up, supposed gang signs, and they were about to get into it over signs, you know. Um, so it's crazy. Okay, yeah, like I was saying, we need to establish our connection with the motherland so we have more options. we can open our eyes to what's possible. We can see the different possibilities that are there, and the thing is when we create those other options, we can build things for ourselves over there. We can start businesses in the continent. We can build lineages in the continent, and it would be good to also start learning the languages and the culture. It's a struggle, but we'll be able to connect ourselves with something larger, and that's our culture, our heritage, our homeland, and we can create equity in our homeland. And it's not going to be easy necessarily because you already have a lot of people in the continent. Not everybody is going to just embrace you and welcome you, and like I said, we can't make blanket statements because there's a lot of Africans that love the diaspora. They see us as one people. They see us as brothers. And of course, you have those who don't care, they're indifferent, or who actively hate or whatever. You have to deal with the struggle, but that doesn't mean it's not worth the struggle. And the crazy thing is if you travel the world, most people when they think American, they think a white person. They don't think someone who's black as an American. And so it just shows you. And May said something that was really poignant, I think, is does America really mess with us like that? You know, and he didn't really push on it, but I think that was poignant in that, like you were saying, we've been sitting at the table for hundreds of years, but we've never been able to eat our meal as we should. For many of those years, our plate was empty, and now they're throwing us some scraps, maybe a little bit of piece of cornbread, and they're saying,
Mhm.
well, you should be thankful, you should be happy. Um, but I think that's where we should go going forward. So I guess you know, just closing out with that, what are your thoughts on that?
In terms of them not messing with us, or that
Yeah,
statement, or
yeah, them not messing with us, but also like going back and building on the continent and reestablishing ourselves on the continent of Africa.
yeah, I mean, there's a bounty of land. I mean, you look at the Congo alone. The Congo alone has enough edible vegetation to feed the entire world, for at least 2 decades into the future.
Mm.
The CIA, which I am no fan of, that ruthless gang, that is assassinated more people than any other gang in the world, but it's not called a gang, but that's exactly what the CIA is. But even by the CIA's estimates, they've said that the Congo, the land in the ground in the Congo, is roughly $6 to $11 trillion worth of mineral resources. And the average Congolese person does not benefit from that in any shape, form, or fashion. You have all these other countries from outside of the continent that benefit. You have children right now in the Congo, boys that are 8, 9, 10, 11, 10 years of age, that are spending 8, 9, 10 hours each day, going in and digging for coltan, getting these awful terminal illnesses, respiratory illnesses from doing that. And obviously you have grown men that are doing that as well. And doing it for multinational corporations that are not even based in the continent of Africa itself. Not that any multinational corporation should work people like that inhumanely, but these corporations are based out of the continent of Africa. And that's, like I said, that's the Congo alone. So you can imagine if Africans from different parts of the world, came into Africa and brought their skill sets, as like just everything from a plumber to an electrician to an academic to a business person, and not came in, Issa, in a role like, what can Africa do for me? But came in, what can I do for Africa? And you would be, they come in with that mentality. You're welcome with open arms. What can you do for Africa? These skill sets that you can bring into all these different African countries that are European made, by the way. All those little borders and whatever, those were caused. Those are borders that were created by Europeans, going back to 1884, 1885 with the Berlin Conference. But before that, they were, kingdoms. They were large swaths of land. That's why you'll find people from different ethnicities. You'll find Awe people not just in Togo, but you'll find Awe in Ghana as well. But you have these people, these Africans throughout the diaspora coming into Africa, seeking a safe refuge to live. Like yes, this Africa can provide me, a beautiful climate. It can provide me, a life free of the oppression that I'm dealing with, in this country, whether it's a European country or it's the United States of America. But I'm bringing these skill sets in. I'm here to contribute to the local economies of these cities or towns, villages, and countries at large. I'm coming here, and so you'll then find people that are coming from the different parts of the diaspora, gainfully employed, living lives that they weren't living before, right? And are part of the process of contributing to not just the economic, but just the general growth of the continent of Africa, growth free of the impediments, the purposeful, methodic impediments and blockades that have been imposed by European nations on the continent of Africa just for their betterment, their benefit, and their betterment. You take them out of the picture, you replace that picture with African people throughout the diaspora, and even those that decide to stay in the Jamaica and Trinidad or Guyana. But now you have these, instead of a transatlantic, slave trade, you have transatlantic partnerships and collaborations. Imagine people in Guyana or in Trinidad or whatever now, that have these collaboration pathways, these two-way, right, quid pro quo, these two-way collaborations with brothers and sisters on the ground in Africa, because they have this and you have this, and now we're working together. The same way we see what European countries, right? European countries don't ask for the input of Africans or African people and when I say Africans, I'm talking about Africans throughout the world. So those that are watching right now, when I say Africans, I'm talking about Africans in Detroit or DC or whatever, because they're not asking for your input. They're making these decisions. When they decide to go ahead and give billions and billions of dollars to Israel to go and mass murder Palestinians, they're not asking for your input. They didn't ask for your input when they decided to go into Libya and bomb Libya into the Stone Age. Libya, before that, had the highest living standard of any African country on the continent. They're not asking for your input in any shape, form, or fashion. These Europeans, they work together. The United States works with NATO. NATO is sycophants the United States. They work together. The United States will get on the phone with Great Britain. Hey, listen, let's go ahead. We're going to go bomb the Houthis. We're going to go, bomb folks in Syria and Iraq and whatever, all these different locations, as they did last week. They don't ask for Africans' input. They're not a part of that conversation. They're not a part of that club. As George Carlin said, it's an exclusive club and you're not a part of it. So if you're a black person, a regular, and I'm not talking about these handkerchief hat Negroes that work for the government, that like the current United States Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, who has no problem propping up AFRICOM, all these military bases throughout the continent. I'm talking about the hoi polloi, the masses like you and I. They're not asking for our input. They are making these decisions unilaterally. They didn't ask for black people's input to go and bomb Vietnam, or to go and bomb Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq after 9/11. They didn't ask for Africans' input to go bomb Iraq in 2003. They're not. They're doing these things unilaterally, whether it's the United States government in lockstep with its European partners, sycophants, the Frances, Great Britain. We can go on and on. So why not us? Why not us create our good old boy, good old girl network amongst Africans throughout the diaspora? And we're not asking for your permission, Europeans, right? So therefore, it's going to take these presidents of African nations to have the guts such as the way they did in South Africa, to have the guts when they decided to go take, Israel to The Hague. It's going to take these African leaders to have the guts to say, we are not renewing this one-sided mining concessions or mining contract that you have where you're just taking all these mineral resources. Get out, get out, get the hell out. The same way we've seen, some of our brothers in Latin American countries over the last decade, where they've told they've told Americans, the Yankees and other Europeans, get the hell out, get out of our country, get out of our continent, get out, get out, get out. And no, we're not paying back this debt. We've already paid it back several times, but the insurance, not the insurance, but the interest makes us continue to have to pay these one-sided, one-sided usury debt, debt loans that were imposed by the IMF and World Bank. Get out, get out. And imagine that. Imagine that. But guess what? It becomes easier, right? To say no if you know your brothers and sisters in all these other African countries are doing the same, right? They can't come after everybody, right? But if you have one African leader and he's standing there and he's courageous to do this, and these other ones are cowards, then the Europeans and the Americans, the Euro-Americans, can say, oh, we can go after them. We can go after him because he's alone. He's isolated. But as you know, but if there's a whole bunch of us saying the same thing, saying, hey, get out. Those days are done. It's a wrap. It's done. Right. And then now we start building these vertical partnership economies that where the trade, we have the transatlantic trade and trade with other Africans throughout the world. And now these infrastructures are building up. I mean, it's possible. You got to dream big, Issa. You got to dream big. You got to dream big. And we know it's possible because the Europeans did it, and they did it through nefarious ways, right? They didn't do it through kindness and partnerships. They did it through evil deeds that the devil himself, Satan himself, would be happy about. We're talking about doing it through Pan-African. We're talking about doing through the benevolence, the revolutionary benevolence of Pan-Africanism and internationalism, where we create these partnerships for the betterment of not just people on the planet right now, but the generations who have not even been born yet. So they're born into a world free of malnutrition, free of poverty, free of these different things. Because as you know, and I'll start with this, based on the mineral resources throughout the continent of Africa, you know this, Issa, and I know this because we've had these conversations offline. There's no way, there's no legitimate reason why, outside of the mass oppression, why anybody in Africa has to suffer through malnutrition, starvation, all these different horrible things that poverty, right. Living off of $3 or less, a day, masses of families in places like Uganda and Congo not able to send their children to school because they're not able to afford the school fees. That shouldn't be happening. There's so much mineral resources and wealth in the continent of Africa. All we need to do is transfer it back into the hands, the black and brown hands of indigenous Africans, and out of the pasty, pink, pale hands of these Europeans that have been grabbing and clawing for generations now.
Absolutely. And you touched on a lot of great points there, especially the fact that we have to unify. And interestingly, in the European Union, I believe there's visa-free travel for all nations that are a part of the European Union, and they can find work in any European Union country. So it's amazing, the unity they have, that Europe has with each other. And also, if you attack one NATO country, as if you attack all of NATO, so they will all retaliate against you. So it's interesting, the unity they have, and it's something that we can improve upon as Africans in the African continent. Because, like you said, there are some leaders who don't stand to the call, and unfortunately that happened with Muammar Gaddafi.
Hmm.
unfortunately. So anyway, this was a great discussion overall. I think, what we really wanted to get at was, just kind of offering a counter perspective to this FBA ADOS rhetoric that's been going around, denigrating our African brothers, saying things like Africa ain't popping and all this. Like you just mentioned, Solomon, Africa is the richest continent in the world.
Yeah.
Can feed, like you said, the Congo can feed the whole world for 2 decades. So, it's amazing the amount of resources and everything like that the continent of Africa has. And so, Solomon, I really appreciate you being on the show. It's an honor to have you as a guest. And, hopefully you can come back on again next time and we can have another great discussion.
It would be an honor. It would be an honor. Thank you so much, and thank you for what you're doing for our people globally, because the people should never minimize the media. I mean, the media is powerful. I mean, powerful, and as Malcolm X said, the media has the power to make the oppressed look like the oppressors, and make the oppressors look like the oppressed. Um, it has that power, and it also has the power when it's used in the way that you're using it, and so many of other, our ancestors before us have used it, and so many brothers and sisters are using it now. It has the ability. So now we might not have the same bandwidth as the corporate media, but with the World Wide Web, and that medium itself, we have the ability to take this interview, this discussion that we've had, and proliferate it. I mean, there could be a brother in Germany, somewhere in Germany, listening, that gets a hold of this interview,
Mm.
and the ideas and the thoughts that we've discussed, you and I have discussed throughout this, just makes sense. And this brother may be the next leader in waiting, and that serves as a spark for him to galvanize, his local community, in Germany, a local community of immigrant Africans that have made their way there, or somewhere in Amsterdam, or in the UK. I mean, it's powerful. How many interviews have you and I watched that emanated from some places far, thousands and thousands and thousands away from us,
Mhm.
but were brought to us instantly by way of the World Wide Web? And so we can um, never underestimate and take for granted the power of revolutionary independent media. And so, I salute you. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. And just let me know whenever you want me to come on again, and it would be my honor.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you guys like that, please follow Solomon at Your World News on YouTube. Please like and subscribe, or subscribe to his channel. Solomon, you have any other social media you want to plug and put out there?
Yeah, they can go to your world. I mean, yeah, yourworldnews.org. They can go to my website, which is solomoncomission.com. That's SOLOMONCOMISSIONG.com. And I've got, lectures and things I've done, like, that are free for people to watch. And yeah, but I would love folks to go to Your World News, to go to yourworldnews.org, and go on YouTube. It's Your World News. I mean, it's youtube.com/ Your World News Media, and you'll find just a range of interviews that we've done over the years, and some of which you've been on, going back to when you were a student, and we did these discussions, in the conference room. You remember that? Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah. So and as always, guys, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Till next time.